Hi, welcome to the Drama Free Living Podcast. Lisa, I'm super excited to kind of dive into a new series. And we want to kind of cover how do we bulletproof our leadership for today and beyond, because there's a lot of changes. We've even seen, we've been in the training business for over 15 years, and we've seen tremendous changes happen. And so we want to maybe kind of cover some of those changes, and almost, if you can navigate change, you can kind of bulletproof your leadership, bulletproof your company.
Absolutely. And I just got to say, please be kind, rewind.
Okay. So let's kind of talk about that phrase that we never hear anymore, right? Now, listen,
Unless you're in Oregon.
Bend, Oregon has the only Blockbuster that is still in operation. Okay. Now, what's fascinating is Blockbuster is a fantastic example of an organization that was not able to transition. Do you know what I discovered, Lisa? They actually had the opportunity to buy Netflix.
No way.
Yeah, they had the opportunity.
Can you imagine if they would have bought Netflix?
It would have been a totally different day. It would have been a game changer, right? And almost like, how many times do opportunities pass us by? And I think sometimes, there's fear, there's risk, there's worry, there's concern, and I've got these opportunities, and really being able to jump into opportunities, super valuable skill, And so I just have a quick question for you, maybe like, what are some opportunities that are in front of you that you're not jumping into yet? What are some possibilities, some new possibilities that maybe you're just sort of dragging your feet? Because I think the idea is don't be Blockbuster, right? Let's not be Blockbuster, because they really had the corner on the market.
Okay. There actually might be some people listening that don't know what Blockbuster is.
Okay. So why don't you just explain? Okay, good
Go
point.
ahead. You go. You can explain better.
Right. So it was this behemoth of a video rental company, right? Back when we still had VHS.
Yeah, I can remember going to the store, and you'd go to the store and, you could do games.
Oh, that's right.
And you could do videos. And I don't remember. I mean, you could do exercise videos.
It was a gamut, right? And it was the place. It was a Blockbuster almost on every corner. It was almost like a Walgreens.
Yeah.
You literally had them all over the place. And almost just by overnight with the changes in the market.
And technology.
Absolutely. And so thinking, through like there's going to be changes. And so we just want to encourage you, we don't want you to be Blockbuster. I don't want to be Blockbuster. And, maybe you've got the corner on the market now in different things, but just because you have the corner on the market now does not mean you're going to have the corner on the market next year. And so always being able to sort of look out and kind of look at the future. And what I love about the future, Lisa, is that, I've learned from Dan Sullivan, he says it's just guessing and betting. And it really is, right? The future is just, I'm making my best bet, I'm making my best guess. And unfortunately, Blockbuster bet wrong.
They bet wrong. They should have bought Netflix.
Yeah. And so let's kind of talk about this first idea of really the change that we have seen in organizations and in leadership. Is one that is different today is we really value the uniqueness of the people that you have on your team. Mm-hmm. And this whole idea that training really has to be unique, right? If you have a unique organization and you have unique people, right? You have a unique culture, and nobody wants to be in a sea of sameness. You
can't be in the sea of sameness today because nothing stays the same.
Yeah. But how many people we sort of have comfort in that sea of sameness, and really the difference in people and really the difference in organization is in their difference, not their sameness, right? I married you because you were unlike anybody I have ever met.
I was so unique.
You were so unique, right? Yeah. And so you think about it, like we need to learn how to celebrate the differences. And I think the change with leadership training and just in organizations is really valuing the uniqueness of people. Mm-hmm. And so let's kind of go through maybe just some mindsets, some skill sets, some ideas that we've kind of come up with. And the first one you have is this whole idea of like how, skill and experience and knowledge and some of those things kind of play into all that.
Absolutely. So in valuing the uniqueness of your people, first, you have to see yourself and your team as capable. And that's a pretty difficult thing to do nowadays because Knowledge, we have so much knowledge paralysis and we have information overload. I kind of dove into the sea of research on this.
You kind of geeked out.
I totally
honestly, when you were
geeked
telling me
out.
about this earlier, I just was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So maybe just try to explain it. Because we got a lot of smart people, on the podcast that'll really probably totally get this.
And I'm not that smart. I just dove into the information overload and knowledge paralysis of this. And I just had so much fun
You did
with
exactly.
it. I totally did.
Right. What we're telling people not to do. So
No, but I know what to do with it.
Okay, good.
I'm going to share it with everyone else, and so they can figure out what they have to do with it.
Okay, perfect.
So there's human thought processing time. So that's basically how long it takes you to process a thought. It varies from individual to individual. Some people are just really quick. They can process very quickly, and others, it takes a little bit longer. But when you have well-insulated nerves, they have been clocked at going 120 meters per second. So that's basically 268 miles per hour.
Inside of your body, just going on.
Your thought process, 268. So when you say 1,000,000 miles a minute, I mean, not quite, but that's what it feels like. And so that's just fascinating. But there is this Buckminster Fuller, back in, I think it was mid to late 1900s. I don't remember the year exactly. He coined the concept of the knowledge doubling curve. And I was like, what the heck is the knowledge? I found all of these statistics, and I was like, what the heck is the knowledge doubling curve? And I mean, I thought I understood it, but I was not sure. Basically, the knowledge doubling curve is what helps us grasp how exponentially the world body of knowledge is increasing. So it's how quickly our body of knowledge is increasing exponentially.
And it's almost this whole idea, right, of like life is continuing to move faster and faster.
Yes, because we're gaining more and more data, information, and knowledge. What's fascinating is up until the 1900s, that pretty much every century, our knowledge doubled every century. It doubled every century is how quickly we increased our data. But then after that, as we start to get into the industrial age and we're starting to make all of these advances, by 1945, he figured that knowledge doubled every 45 years instead of every century. So that's twice as fast. Well, then, we come to like 2014. We've got nanotechnology. Knowledge started doubling, by then was doubling every 2 years. And clinical knowledge was doubling every 18 months. Okay, compared to
my brain hurts right now just even hearing that.
Yeah, and so I'm thinking, so my mom was born in 1943. When she was born, it was just doubling every 45 years. She's 81. She's almost 82 now, and I'm thinking what she has seen in her lifetime on how quickly knowledge has doubled. I mean, and I'm thinking, no wonder it's hard as you're getting older and older to be able to stay up with the trends, the knowledge, the information, because it's changing so quickly. Well, so then also there's kind of another interesting statistic. So the volume of medical knowledge was doubling about every 8 years before COVID.
Yep.
So post-COVID, they're saying every 78 days.
So it's doubling every 78 days. Okay, so I kind of have a question, right? It's like if life is moving faster and faster, right, isn't part of the goal of like how do we continue to slow it down?
Yes, and we are going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because that is how you deal with this issue.
Okay.
So, then we were projected by 2025 that knowledge was going to double every 12 hours.
Every 12 hours by 2025. Okay, so you almost like can't even keep up. And you know what I think? I think the goal is, I think the problem sometimes is people like try to keep up with this.
Right.
Right? It's like we feel like there's this expectation that I have to keep up with it. Right? And I put this expectation on myself and live under that frustration and pressure. And then I don't show up the best.
Well, especially when you consider you're thinking, okay, my job security is based on me being able to keep up. So what do you do with that? It's just it's a difficult conundrum. So this is something else interesting is from 2020 to 2025, and this was done based early, in 2020. They figured that global data creation was projected to grow by more than 180 zettabytes.
We don't know what a zettabyte is.
I'm like, what the heck is a zettabyte? Okay, so 1 billion 1 terabyte hard drives.
Yep.
So you have 1 billion 1 terabyte hard drives. That's what you need to store 1 zettabyte. And from 2020 to 2025, global data creation was increasing by 180 of those.
Right. Gosh.
And I'm thinking, how do we keep up? And what is the impact of all of this knowledge doubling and data creation growing? What's that impact on us in our companies? What's that impact on us and how we even feel about our area of expertise and our skill set? If you aren't constantly learning, you're following behind. But honestly, if you're constantly learning, you're still following behind because of the concept of knowledge doubling. So how does that impact us, and what does that cause within us internally, and what is the dissonance that's happening?
Well, and I almost think like there has to be this selective learning process happening, right? Because I can't learn everything. I can't be an expert on everything. And I think part of the goal is like really decide what you can be an expert on, what you have a passion to be an expert on. And some of these things don't put the expectation in yourself to, I have to know it all, because you'll never know it all.
Right. Not now,
You know?
not anymore.
No, you never will. And it's okay. It's okay. Listen, don't be a know-it-all. That's what we say today, right? You don't have to be a know-it-all. But how many people are like, I want to know everything. And then I know you're going to kind of dive into this a little bit. This paralysis of analysis sort of happens.
Absolutely. And people are worried with the advent of AI that how that's going to affect us. And it just increases the importance of us being able to process well mentally with our knowledge, but also emotionally and physically. And that's part of why there's been such an emphasis on your physical health, your mental clarity, your emotional well-being, because there's this onslaught of all of this knowledge coming at us. And you have to be able to function at peak to be able to handle this inflow and this influx. And so part of the problem is that knowledge or information without practical experience or without skills produces a feeling of overwhelm. And the reason for that is because there's a gap. There's a gap between what someone knows and what you can actually do. And so if you know a whole lot more than what you can actually do, there's this natural feeling of overwhelm that you aren't going to be able to function up to your knowledge base. Once upon a time, it was, I only know what I know. And if I can just do as well as I know to do, then I'm pretty happy with myself. And that's not even possible in our day and age.
Well, and isn't there almost like this gap of overwhelm, right? It's like, this is what I know, this is what I do. And the bigger the gap, sort of the bigger the overwhelm. And I was just thinking about it, Lisa. I think sometimes people like have this expectation that I have to be like a computer. Right? To process all this information. And it's almost like, let computers do what computers do best, right? Almost like people are afraid of AI, but I think kind of look at AI as a teammate. Look at AI as a team member. Look at AI as a resource, not as something to compete against, right? Because at the end of the day, Lisa, I'll never be better at processing information than a computer. Never. No. Right? That's why it's created, is to process information. So human beings are not the best information processors.
We're not the best information
gatherers
or holders.
No, I mean, what we're brilliant at is we're brilliant at taking experiences and creating meanings and messages out of those experiences and, creating products and services, and the creativity. Like a computer will never be creative.
Right.
And so that's where, I think sometimes when we're stuck in the processing of information, of knowledge, we're not creative.
Right.
And I think that's sort of the crux of it.
Yeah. And so this produces this overwhelm. It also, it fuels perfectionism.
Yep.
And that's basically when individuals feel the pressure to excel, and they fear making mistakes. Yeah. Because this fear of this perfectionism, because we have all of this, what's perfect, this knowledge that we have right now, which 12 hours from now is going to be different. But what we know right now is what we're trying to attain to in this perfection. And when we can't hold on to that perfection, or when we can't attain to that, then we fear making mistakes. And this overwhelm and this perfectionism creates a sense of paralysis where individuals, they feel incapable of taking actions. We feel incapable of taking risks. we feel incapable of making decisions, and we have fear of failure because of our inadequacy and trying new things.
And it's almost like this lack. Go ahead.
No, and it's just very, very difficult. And you're going to talk about what we do with this information, or what we do with this new sense that we're finding ourselves in. But it comes down to awareness and mindfulness, and being aware that this is just what it is, and knowing, and that's why there's the phrase "do it afraid." We have to embody that. We have to be able to embody the concept that we're going to do it and we will make mistakes. We're going to do it and we're going to be afraid.
Yeah. So I have a good question for everybody. It's, what are you not doing right now because you don't have all the information? Right? You're kind of just waiting. I got to know more about this. Right? And listen, what do you need to step out in right now, even though you don't know everything? And honestly, it's okay that you don't know everything. There has to be some kind of uncertainty attached to it. But that's a great question, because how many people, even in their organizations, they just sort of just stop. And we know so many CEOs that we work with, that their team members, they just sort of stop. They're just not certain, and they just sort of, and people stop and they don't take the next step. And really kind of dealing, I think as CEOs, we really have to step back and really work with our teams. There are so many times that I'm talking with leaders, and they say, oh, they're complaining about their team not having initiative. And they go, well, we got to send them into more training. Right? And it's like, how many times have they went to training and trained about the same thing?
And just gathered more and more knowledge.
Right. But then it's like they've never made any changes. And so sometimes, listen, you got to stop training. And that's crazy for a training company to say, right? But sometimes you have to stop training and just start getting them to do, and just kind of stepping out. And so, so let's just kind of talk about some real practical things that we can do with this, because we know it's there. We know it's not going to stop. We're going to continue to get this knowledge, and all of this data is going to come to us.
And we have to just accept it. We have to realize this is the world that we live in, and really embrace it, because when we embrace it and we come to it with a positive perspective, it empowers us rather than paralyzes us.
Right. Almost like, hey, let's use this information to create, not to complain. Like, this is the information we have, so let's not complain about it. So interesting. The International Journal of Behavioral Science, they published a survey, and they said that 70% of people experience imposter syndrome at some point in their life. And I think this is what happens.
I totally get that.
Yeah,
I think I experience it every single day, because, with knowledge doubling, I certainly don't know what I'm doing half the time.
Right. And I think, I don't know everything, and I don't know how to do this. And so I have these self-limiting beliefs. I have this imposter syndrome. I have this low confidence. And listen, this is a big deal, because we talk to a lot of CEOs and a lot of organizations that, we train with. One of the things that they say is that this is one of the best things that you've helped our teams with, is really increasing their confidence, right? Kind of getting out of, some of the imposter syndrome. They've said, hey, this is some of the best ideas that you've brought to us in our organization. So we're going to give you sort of under the table kind of stuff, kind of sneak peek, kind of like pull back the curtain a little bit, and just share with you a couple ideas that we've come up with. Is one that's very powerful is, if you want to deal with this imposter syndrome and really starting to value the uniqueness of people, is one thing is really encourage self-reflection, right? Being able to really step back and go, I wonder why. It's the value of why we think everybody should have a therapist. Right. I was just with my therapist yesterday, and just feeling
and you came back so much happier. You were like,
amazing how that worked.
30 minutes, and boy, all the conundrum, all of the confusion is cleared away.
Right. And how many times does that happen to people? They get mucked up on the inside. And so listen, if you're mucked up on the inside, one great thing to do is, we have some journaling techniques that we really encourage, because this whole idea of, really reflecting on, why do I do what I do? Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? And doing some deep dives into that, why do I do it this way? And really this ability to self-reflect, because if we don't, we don't get the value of the past. The big value of the past is what we learn from it. The value of every experience is not the experience, but it's what I learned from that experience. And that's kind of the key.
And when we talk about the value of the past, it's not necessarily 20 years ago or when I was a child. 5 minutes ago was the past.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so extracting the value of the conversation you had in the hall with your coworker that just really set you off. And the more quickly you can realize the past is 5 minutes ago or one day ago, then you can switch and begin to draw that value from it.
Yeah. Another one is really promoting this growth mindset. And Carol Dweck has done a bunch of work, and we don't want to rehash some of that. But this whole idea is that people's abilities are developed through the striving, through the effort, through the perseverance. That's where you create the capabilities. You don't create the capabilities before you step out and do it. The capabilities are created in the moment. So your capabilities are created in the moment. So think about if you're just stopping and, letting, some of this, analysis by paralysis kind of stop you, and you're not stepping out, you're never creating capability. And then you have this gap of overwhelm. And think about it. If you are in a gap of overwhelm, okay, if you're in this gap of overwhelm, then it's probably you're just not probably stepping out, right? It's like you have this knowledge, but you just have to step out and a little bit understand that some of these fears, they're normal. And I think that's the key to really sort of normalizing the fear. I was just talking with a group of nurses a couple of weeks ago, Lisa, and just about how do we upgrade, our relationship with fear? It's like, I feel afraid. I feel a little unsure. I feel a little uncertain. I'm like, well, you're supposed to. That's normal. And I think kind of normalizing some of that is really helpful for people, because a lot of times people, they don't feel normal with it.
Absolutely. And, something that we tell our clients and we really help them when they're in the hiring process is you hire for heart. Not for skill or talent.
Yeah.
Because of this knowledge doubling, you're going to have to develop your talent and develop your employees. Now, obviously, there's certain certifications. There has to be a certain experience level to jump in behind with a surgeon in an operating room. But really developing, really hiring for heart, and that their heart is with you, and that their attitude is open and willing to jump in to learn and to put themselves into uncomfortable situations and to be part of your team is the most valuable thing, because then you can train everything else.
Well, Lisa, and I think because of the change of organizations and changes happening so quickly, roles continue to change. I mean, how we lead the organization today is not how we led it 15 years ago.
It's not how we led it 2 years ago.
Well, and think about it, like some of our job responsibilities have changed, right? And because some of the training ideas have changed, some of the ways that we deliver training has changed, and this ability to continue to grow with an organization. And we've even seen that with team members. Some team members, they're like, well, I was hired for this. And well, yeah, but that was 2 years ago. That was 5 years ago. And the organization looks different. And this role now demands this and this. Can you develop with that? And can you continue to grow with that? And so I think that's the real idea of hiring for heart, right? Hiring for, hey, I'm willing to step out and be courageous. I'm willing to step out even though I don't know everything. I'm willing to go get some more knowledge. I'm willing to do these things. And really, I think that's the key, is really being willing. And how do we create that willingness inside of people? And so some ideas are really like creating a supportive environment, right? Where people feel respected. And one way to respect them is you value their uniqueness.
Yeah.
Right. And you continue to look at, how can we support them? Right. We have different tools like the GPS framework and, that are all inside of Emotionally Intelligent that people found super helpful with this. But really, it's that creating that supportive environment that allows people to grow.
Right.
Right. Because environment determines growth. I mean, at least we have the cherry tree. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Kind of sad, right? It's not blooming.
It's weeping.
It's weeping.
It's literally weeping.
It is literally. We're probably going to have to dig it up, right? We spent all this money to plant it.
And it was so beautiful.
And it did good the first year, but for whatever.
And the second year.
But there's just this environment, right? The environment changed. We probably didn't do the things that we needed to do. Probably didn't get it the nutrients, right? And
they're susceptible to blight, so.
Right. Well, think about how many employees are susceptible to blight. How many people are susceptible to blight? And And really,
how can we blight-proof ourselves?
You know what? That's the next podcast.
Go.
We have just got the name for the podcast.
The next book, How to Blight-Proof
Yourself. Yeah, How to Blight-Proof Yourself. Yeah.
But what's fascinating is creating this supportive environment is crucial, especially when you have those highly detail-oriented people that are on your team. Those, if you follow the Enneagram, those that are number 1s and 5s. If you follow the DISC, those that are high Cs, that are just real. They have a desire for accuracy, for knowledge, for facts. That's the group of people I think that would be hit the hardest with this doubling of knowledge, because there's so much knowledge coming forth, and they have such a desire to do things accurately, to do things well, and they're very needed. We need our books to be correct, and we need our engineers to follow the formulas, and it's a difficult thing when this knowledge is changing so quickly that you can no longer walk in the accuracy that you're accustomed to. And so creating a supportive environment and everybody understanding it's okay to make mistakes and you will make mistakes.
Yeah. So the question really as leaders and CEOs is like, how do we lead people like this, right? So encouraging self-reflection with people, promoting a growth mindset, almost like letting people know failure is okay. A great question, and I've been working on this a little bit myself, is like every day I want to fail. Hey, where did I fail today?
That just is hard for me to even think.
But think about it. If I didn't fail, I didn't learn. I mean, because if I succeeded, I'm like, yeah, I already knew that. Yeah, I knew how to do that. Well, of course I did that, right? But if I ask myself, okay, where did I fail this week? And if I'm not failing every day, maybe I'm not learning every day. And so really promoting that growth mindset and creating this supportive environment. Another thing leaders can do is really challenge negative self-talk. Right? Now, listen, whatever you don't address, you actually endorse. So when you hear negative self-talk and you don't address it, then really as an organization, as a leader, you've just endorsed that. And especially people, people that really care about the organization, they don't need you to beat themselves up more, beat them up about their mistakes, because they're already doing a fine job at it themselves.
A lot of times they have a very harsh inner critic.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is because you're so used to that's what your inner critic is, you don't even realize that it's harsh. And we've had plenty of conversations because it took you a lot longer to deal with your harsh inner critic than it took me to deal with my harsh inner critic. I worked on probably 15, 20 years ago. I used to have a really harsh inner critic and just did a lot of work on silencing that harsh inner critic and replacing it with mindsets and thoughts that were more empowering and that would drive me further. And yet your harsh inner critic is what was driving you. Yeah. And you didn't even realize that wasn't maybe normal, or that it was even a harsh inner critic, that it was maybe there was something not so harsh about it.
Well, yeah. And it really put me in that gap of overwhelmed. I kind of lived my life in this idea of overwhelmed and almost like thought it was normal, when realizing that, I just have to like really look and understand like what experiences are, right? And what they do for you. And this whole idea of progress, not perfection. And I think that's the key thing with people, is that as you continue to have this maybe paralysis, gap of overwhelmed, it's progress, not perfection, right? Are you a little bit better today than you were yesterday? And you never want to judge your past self by your present knowledge. How many times do we do that, right? It's like we look back, oh, I should have did this. I should have. Listen, we said this before. It's like you're doing the best. People are doing the best they can with what they have. Right. People are doing the best they can with what they know. And I never want to criticize somebody for something they never knew.
Yeah.
Right? I never want to put people, down for something that, they just never learned. And so part of our job as leaders is to help people learn, help people grow, help people develop, and really understanding that, hey, they're going to deal with this analysis of paralysis and kind of what to do with it. So this is kind of the first step in how to bulletproof your leadership, your company, is really valuing the uniqueness of others, not allowing to get in the paralysis of analysis, but just stepping back and realize hey, everybody's unique and everybody's, I want to say special, but maybe that's
capable.
Capable,
it's seeing yourself and your team as capable.
Yeah.
You're not capable compared to the amount of knowledge that's out there, but you're capable in what skill set you have right now in yourself, and being able to have something to base a confidence on that you can launch forward to increase your capability, your experience, and your skill set.
Yeah. So we just want to ask you real quick, like, what do you want to do about paralysis by analysis? Right? What's something you can do to get out of it a little bit? What's something you can do to encourage your team to, have self-reflection? What do you need to do to create a supportive environment? Just a couple quick questions. But Lisa, what are some takeaways that you got from today?
That it does make sense that why I do feel overwhelmed and why I do feel as though there's just so much out there that I don't know how to do. And I'm increasingly feeling maybe less capable. And it's because the knowledge is increasing so dramatically that the more knowledge there is, the less capable I will be based comparative to the knowledge that's available. But when I sit down and think, okay, I am capable in this area and this is where I can move forward on, it instills a sense of confidence in me that I can continue to learn, and I will never be as capable as all of the knowledge that's out there, but I'm capable with the knowledge that I've got and that with that knowledge that I put into place.
Well, and I think for me, just the stepping back and realize then that I'll never be perfect. I'm not supposed to be perfect. And almost finally, we've finally come to that point.
We finally figured that one out.
Here it is. Yes. But I think my key sort of driving question today is, what are the areas that I need to make progress on in my life? What are the areas I need to make progress on in my leadership? Like, how can I become just a little bit better? Like, my leadership will never be perfect. Our organization will never be perfect. Dennis will never be perfect. But what's one thing I can do to make progress today? And so that's the question I kind of want to lead you with. And one thing, Lisa, we wanted to kind of make a quick offer is this idea of what happens when people get into this overwhelm, this gap of overwhelm, they get into frustration.
Right.
And so we created a tool called the Frustration Reducer, and we're just going to give it to you for free. And what our clients have said is that they use this to get mental clarity. So if you're mucked up in your brain, right, kind of beating yourself up, maybe you have team members that beat yourself up, download the Frustration Reducer. We're going to put a link there in the show notes, and you can have it for yourself. But our clients use it when they are mucked up inside of their brain, mucked up on kind of on the inside and can't quite make the next steps. They're a little irritated. They're a little annoyed. And so they use this tool. It's a 5-step thinking process, and they've used it with team members to really get clarity. We just had a client in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that we were doing a training with yesterday. And she said that was one of the most powerful tools that we're able to share with them. And, what she said, and she gave a little secret away, is that she said, I even started using it personally with my husband.
Wow.
And she says, it works so well. I was like,
does her husband know?
Well, I don't even know if her husband knows, but
if it's working,
working, right? And so if you're feeling a little mucked up and you need some clarity, Frustration Reducer is a tool for you. So we just want to encourage you, go make progress. You're not going to be perfect. What's one thing you can do to make progress over the next 7 days? And we'll see you next time on the Drama Free Living Podcast.